So this section's on the sexual ethics issue of premarital sex. So the main opposition to premarital sex or the having of sex prior to being married to someone is the fact that it really does oppose the sort of generally held Jewish view that a person should be married and the holiness of sex within the marriage. So because sex is seen as so positive in the right context, when it's not in that right context of marriage and a loving relationship and all those sorts of things, it doesn't really fit in well with that. So it goes against that positive view of marriage. And when we look at the Jewish marriage, you'll also see that there's sort of two parts to the marriage itself. You have the betrothal service, then you have the marriage contract. So there's sort of two parts to the marriage service and marriage ceremony itself. And then the third part is the consummation of that marriage. So in terms of that, the way the marriage is even constructed, there are those three parts, which implies that the third part of it is when that marriage should be consummated. So again, the whole notion that premarital sex is considered negative is because of the positivity with which sex is seen in the right circumstances, in the right context. So from that stance, it's not really overtly condemned or directly condemned by Jewish adherents. There's no sort of commandment of the Torah that says that you should not engage in premarital sex or forbidding it. And if a couple was to have a child out of wedlock, then that child wouldn't be shunned or considered illegitimate. It would still be just their child. It wouldn't be considered as something wrong or anything like that. But they do believe in a concept of zniut, which is it's spelt Tzniut. So zniut, and what that is sort of that's a concept of modesty. In other words, that we should try and maintain, as a Jewish adherent, should try and maintain your modesty, and your body is a vehicle to modesty. So whilst that also applies to wearing appropriately modest clothing, it can also apply to engaging in acts like premarital sex, which are not a path to holiness, so to speak. On top of that, you've also got that quote from before, from Genesis, that Adam knew his wife Eve, and the suggestion that concept of knowing of his wife meant that you should know a person spiritually and intellectually prior to knowing them physically. So that also comes into that as well. Some Orthodox adherents have some barriers that have been established to try and prevent premarital sex from occurring because they consider it to be ethically negative. And there's a particular title called the Negiah, Neggiah, and that literally means touch. And that what that means is that young women, in particular, I think, are not left alone prior to being married, and they're not forbidden to touch members of the opposite sex outside their own family members prior to being married as well. So the Negiah is another example of a group that is forbidden to, like it's a demonstration of how negatively, particularly some Orthodox communities see premarital sex and their attempts to prevent it from occurring. So that's essentially it. That's premarital sex. It's quite a short one, but you do need to know all those aspects. The zniut, the concept of Adam knowing his wife Eve, the positive way that marriage is seen in the marriage, and that sex is seen in the right context in the marriage, and also the negiah as well.